the Parliament also passed unanimously my private member's motion to declare November as the Hindu Heritage Month, which is a good thing. And the key things about the Hindu Heritage Month, my two objectives were two things. One, that we recognize, celebrate, educate, share the contributions of Hindu heritage to the mankind over thousands of years. We know what Hindus have done, what Hindu heritage has done, what Hindu culture has done for hundreds of years, thousands of years. The contribution of Hindu heritage to medicine, astronomy, various fields, science is very well documented, but most Canadians don't know that. And we have to use this opportunity, this Hindu Heritage Month, to educate them. Second, most important to me is that we have to recognize the contributions of Hindu Canadians to the socio-economic development of our country.
I have to say, I wish he were here. I would want to congratulate him because in the United States, we have 5 or 6 Indian Hindu congressmen in the Democratic Party who are ashamed of that.
Yes.
Yeah. And I say kudos to you Canadians that you've got your MPs representing you rather than betraying you. Then the nest of snakes is Harvard, where the snakes are being produced, born, nurtured. They're breeding snakes with this poison. And then these snakes are being exported all over. They bring snakes from India, baby snakes, and make them put poison and send them back. And there's a lot of this going on. And I would say a couple of thousand people from India have been brainwashed, turned around from industry, from media, from academia, from policy making. All kind of people like that have come and gone through these seminars and conferences and been sent back. It's like a training manual for a Hindu toolkit. Think of it like that. So we're training people on what are these issues, what to say. So if you say what I've said and somebody wants to push back and get more data, then we have the data also, the evidence. That's why the book is big, but don't let that scare you.
Namaste everyone. Om. As is our Indian tradition, let's start with prayer with Pandit ji before we start the event. भगवान का आशीर्वाद लेने के लिए, इस बुक की सफलता के लिए, राजीव जी, चंद्र आर्य जी, आपसे भी प्रार्थना है कि शास्त्री जी के साथ दीप प्रज्वलन
भगवान विष्णु मंगलम गरुड़ध्वज मंगलम पुंडरीकाक्ष मंगलाय तनोहरि ओम आदित्य वशुरुद्रा विश्वे देवा वरदगणः तिलकं ते प्रियच्छन्तु धर्म कामार्थ सिद्धये ओम आरो भद्राः कृतभोजन्तु विश्वतो अरबदासो अपरीतासो देवालो यथा तद्मिद्रिये असन्न प्रायुवो रक्षितारो दिवे दिवे स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तारिक्षो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु दीपो ज्योति परब्रह्म दीपो ज्योति जनार्दन दीपो हरति पापं दीप ज्योति नमोस्तुते शुभं करोतु कल्याणम् आरोग्यं सुख संपदां मम बुद्धि प्रकाशाय दीप ज्योतिर्नमोस्तुते अग्नि ज्योति ज्योतिरग्नि स्वाहा सूर्यो ज्योति ज्योति सूर्यः स्वाहा अग्निवर्चो ज्योतिर्वर्चः स्वाहा वर्चो ज्योतिर्वर्चः स्वाहा ज्योतिः सूर्यः सूर्यो ज्योतिः स्वाहा मंगलम भगवान विष्णु मंगलम गरुड़ध्वज मंगलम पुंडरीकाक्ष मंगलाय तनोहरि।
आप सभी को सादर नमन। आज बड़ी खुशी की बात है कि आज हिंदू हेरिटेज सेंटर हिंदू संस्कृति केंद्र में हमारे परम श्रद्धेय श्री राजीव मल्होत्रा, जिनके साथ मैं भी हमेशा व्हाट्सएप पर और हमेशा अवगत रहता हूँ सारी गतिविधियों से, जिन्होंने पूरे विश्व में भारतवर्ष में और भारतीय सनातन संस्कृति हिंदू धर्म का खूब प्रचार प्रसार जिनके माध्यम से हो रहा है। आज हमारे मध्य कुछ वर्ष पूर्व श्री मल्होत्रा जी हमारे मध्य यहीं विराजमान हुए थे। मुझे बड़ा अच्छा याद आ रहा है। मल्होत्रा जी कह रहे थे जब मैं अंदर प्रवेश किया तो मुझे याद आ गया संस्मरण कहीं। तो मल्होत्रा जी एक बार पुनः आज आपका हृदय से हम हिंदू हेरिटेज सेंटर की ओर से भी हार्दिक अभिनंदन करते हैं। और बड़ी खुशी की बात है हमारे एमपी श्री चंद्र आर्य जी जो प्रथम बार यहाँ, वैसे तो व्यक्तिगत रूप में आए हैं पहले भी, लेकिन प्रथम बार आज इस समारोह में सम्मिलित हो रहे हैं इस कार्यक्रम। तो मैं आपका भी हृदय से अभिनंदन करता हूँ हिंदू हेरिटेज और बाकी बहुत पद है। और आप सबों का बहुत धन्यवाद आज के कार्य में सम्मिलित होने का। बाकी आगे कार्य में धन्यवाद।
दीप प्रज्वलन के बाद पुस्तक के विमोचन के लिए ईश्वर से प्रार्थना करते हुए शास्त्री जी लीड करेंगे। एंड मैं धन्यवाद कहना चाहता हूँ। एक छोटी सी बात मैं कहूँगा कि ये बहुत विशेष बात है कि चंद्र आर्य जी भी हैं, राजीव जी भी हैं, एक तरफ स्कॉलर हैं, एक तरफ क्षत्रिय हैं, जो हिंदू संस्कृति के लिए दोनों एक साथ हमारे सामने स्टेज पे हैं। दैट्स अ वेरी स्पेशल थिंग। अगर वहाँ से आचार्य के रूप में अगर कुछ पॉलिसीज़ के लिए कुछ मार्गदर्शन मिलता है तो उन पॉलिसीज़ का इम्प्लीमेंटेशन, उन पॉलिसीज़ को कानून के तरीके से कि संस्कृति धर्म आगे कैसे बढ़े, चंद्र आर्य जी उसमें इतने अग्रणीय काम कर रहे हैं, तो उसके लिए हम बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद करते हैं। सो ये जोड़ी है जो धर्म की निरंतरता को आगे बढ़ाने के लिए हमेशा तैयार है। तो ये मूर्ति बहुत ही विशेष है मेरी दृष्टि में। धन्यवाद चंद्र आर्य जी, धन्यवाद शास्त्री जी, धन्यवाद राजीव जी। हाँ प्लीज़ आप विमोचन करवाएं शास्त्री जी।
मंगलम भगवान विष्णु मंगलम गरुड़ध्वजा मंगलम पुंडरीकाक्ष मंगलाय तनोहरि। ओम सरस्वती व्राजभिर्वाजिनीवति यज्ञं वस्तु धियं वसु। ओम श्री सरस्वत्यैर्मा या कुंदेन्दु तुषार हारधवला या शुभ्रवस्त्रावृता या वीणा भरदंड मंडितकरा या श्वेत पद्मासना या ब्रह्मा चतुशत शंकर प्रभृतिभिर्वै सदा वंदिता सा मां पातु सरस्वती भगवती निःशेषजाड्यापहा। कीर्ति प्रदे खिल मनोरथ दे महारित विद्या प्रदायिनी सरस्वती नवनित्यम। मां शारदा का आशीर्वाद ऐसे बना रहे हो भारतीय ये भी मैं आपके लिए लाया था कि विमोचन के अवसर पर आपके लिए बहुत बहुत आप और हमारे लिए बड़ी गौरवान्वित विषय है कि आप भारतीय संघ के इतना कार्य करें आपके माध्यम से, इसलिए आपको कोटि से बधाई। और परमपिता परमात्मा की प्रार्थना भगवान आपको सताइए करें और खूब विपुल कीर्ति और सफल हम सभी को आपसे पूरा बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
धन्यवाद शास्त्री जी, धन्यवाद। So just to remind the outline of today's event, we will have comments from Chandra Arya ji first, and then we will have a talk with Rajiv ji's talk. And in the meantime, you'll have the index cards if people want to ask questions. We have volunteer here. Ashish, can you raise your hand? Ashish is collecting the index cards. We'll take those questions. And I know Rajiv ji really enjoys Q&A and good discussion. So just write your questions there. If you write your name, and if something is not clear, I'll call you up for clarification on that question and stuff. And if there's similar questions, I'll combine them and stuff and ask the questions on your behalf. I have a list of 7 or 8 questions to kind of mix and match with your questions. So as I was saying, to me, it is a very special thing when we have an acharya kind of a person like a scholar, Rajiv ji, who's on stage. They go deep into the content and they say, okay, how the civilizational continuity works should keep moving forward. At the same time, as we respect our scholars and acharyas and pandits, I always debate in my head, Bhagwan Ram was Chhatriya. So we respect Bhagwan Ram and Krishna at the same time. So Chandra Arya ji is the Chhatriya who's leading the charge. I know he has been he's been instrumental for this Hindu Heritage Month that we are in right now. So Honorable Chandra Arya ji, I mean, I have your whole biography, which I'm sure people are going to get bored with if I read it. But I checked before you come. Pretty much everybody knows you, but we all know Honorable Chandra Arya ji. As I grasped through his work, his passion has been more into the middle class, normal middle class people. How do they live their life nicely in terms of having full housing for all Canadians? How do they retire effectively so that policy making and Canadian policies support it? And as an important politician, he has contributed in lots of policy making committees and this and that. So I won't bore you with that. But some of my heartfelt thought is like, he is taking our Sanskriti's ideology, which is holistic, inclusive, and getting it done through the systems, because these systems have intricacies, and you need to be really a critical thinker. You should be able to think in multiple dimensions and impact and different levels. So it requires significant, not only critical thinking and intelligence to connect the dot of what the policy's impact is going to be. It's about consideration of all kinds of realities. So I can't say enough about the effort of Chandra Arya ji in terms of moving our Hindu heritage forward. Chandra ji, if you have a few comments from you, please.
Namaskar. Thank you so much for welcoming me here. At the outset, I would like to thank Ravi Huda and Bharati ji for inviting me, making sure that I come here on time. This year has been quite momentous for Hindu Canadians. A lot of things are happening. First, we have a Hindu Prime Minister in the United Kingdom, which is a big thing for us. So we have got two people of Indian heritage, one the Vice President of the United States and now the Prime Minister of United Kingdom. That's a big deal for us. And I hope that motivates our younger generation Hindu Canadians to step forward, to be more active in the public service and take the Hindu Canadians to the new height. Next is that I think at the beginning of this year, there was a bill in Canadian Parliament banning the Nazi symbol of hatred, which we all support, that the Nazi symbol of hatred should be banned, but called it swastika. So that was when I decided, no more keeping silent, no more working in the background. We have to come to the forefront. That was when I made the statement on swastika. And I can tell you that a lot of MPs, in fact, some of the MPs came and told me, Chandra, that is your mistake. I asked, what? You should have educated us. You should have educated what swastika actually means. That is your mistake, so correct it. And that's what we have been doing. That's what we have been doing on individual level. We don't have to wait for some national figure, national body or national organization to do. Each one of us can do it. Each one of us can educate the schools where your children go, or the organization you deal with, or the police authorities, or the local elected city councillors or MPPs or the MPs, etc. Then few days back, last week, Statistics Canada came out with a report that the population of Hindu Canadians has gone up by 100% in the last 10 years. We are 830,000 strong Hindu Canadians today. We are form 2.3% of the population. In the entire last decade, 18.1% of immigrants to Canada came from India. You may think that 18% is not a big number, but it has never happened in Canada since 1960s. People from 150 different countries come to Canada. Out of that one country, India alone has sent 18%, which is a good thing. And then the international students, we are getting lots of international students. I think almost 600,000 international students. 40% of them are from India alone. Again, from about 100 different countries, international students come to Canada, and one country is dominating by sending 40% of the students, which shows there's a growth potential for Hindu Canadians in Canada. And it is time that we start recognizing that. The object, the Parliament also passed unanimously my private member's motion to declare November as the Hindu Heritage Month, which is a good thing. And The key things about the Hindu Heritage Month, my two objectives were two things. One, that we recognize, celebrate, educate, share the contributions of Hindu heritage to the mankind over thousands of years. We know what Hindus have done, what Hindu heritage has done, what Hindu culture has done for hundreds of years, thousands of years. The contribution of Hindu heritage to medicine, astronomy, various fields, science is very well documented, but most Canadians don't know that. And we have to use this opportunity, this Hindu Heritage Month, to educate them. Second, most important to me is that we have to recognize the contributions of Hindu Canadians to the socio-economic development of our country and enriching our multicultural heritage. You know, Hindu Canadians as an ethnic group is one of the best ethnic groups in Canada, highly educated, good income, very few, I mean, I have not come across anybody who's living on social welfare. I'm sure there will be some, but in general, highly educated, have done so much of positive contribution to the socio-economic development of a country. You know, if you look at North American major tech companies, many of the chief executives are Hindu Americans, but people of Hindu heritage. So these are the kind of things we need to recognize, and that's finally. You know, when people, generally a Canadian or anybody talks of heritage, usually they think in terms of the cultural heritage, you know, what they see in a museum or what they see in an archaeological site, etc. But UNESCO has identified what it calls as invisible or intangible heritage that passes from generation to generation. Most of this intangible heritage is not very well coded. It is not very well written. It is not a written script somebody can read and understand and follow it. So it can be, for example, the what we call as the oral heritage, the songs, the storytelling, the kathas as we call it, things like that. Or it can be a performing arts like Bharatanatyam or Carnatic music, things like that. Or it can be the festivities, the community events like the Diwali we host. Or it can be the traditional knowledge, the traditional medicine or traditional cuisine or traditional navigational methods. Or it can be something like the traditional arts and crafts, the things that are made by hand. So those are the kind of things that is also needs to be highlighted. There are two objectives. One, to educate Canadians, but more importantly, to educate our younger generations in Canada. And I keep telling this everywhere we go. When we say Hindu Canadians, not all of us have come from India. People have come from all parts of South Asia. People have come from Africa. People have come from Caribbean. They're also Hindu Canadians. And we need to recognize that. We need to highlight that too. You know, when I spoke on Swastika on Parliament Hill, Leslie Lewis, the Conservative MP, who ran for leadership twice, she came to me and said, Chandra, my mom belongs to a practicing Hindu family. She's a Christian, that's fine. And when I hosted when I raised the Hindu flag, a flag of Om on it on Parliament Hill to mark the beginning of the Hindu Heritage Month, I gave her an opportunity to speak. She said to everybody, my forefather, my great-grandfather name was Raghunath. He came from India. See, now people are taking pride to say that they have the Hindu heritage, they have the connection to that, you know. So the more we talk about it, the more people will be comfortable, the more people will acknowledge. And so those are the kind of things we do. You know, whatever I'm doing here is just what scholars like Rajiv Malhotra have laid on. They have worked for decades together. They have laid the groundwork on which we are walking. So what they have done for thing, today I'm doing something, tomorrow one of you will do, otherwise our younger generation will do much more. Thank you so much for welcoming me. Rajivji, thank you so much for.
Thank you very much, Chandra Arya.
I'm going to meet Rajiv Malhotra tomorrow again. I've got two other events to attend. So if you kindly excuse me, I have to leave. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chandra Arya. Let's give him a big hand and a big thank you. Thank you, Ji. Just out of curiosity, how many of you are hearing Rajiv Ji for the first time? Oh, we have in person, let us say. All right. So you are lucky in that sense. How many of you have never heard him on internet even? Okay, so that means most of you are familiar with him, so I don't need to give you too much detail, long story, no long context. Or let me just say, how many of you guys need a little bit of a context or a good amount of context what Rajivji's work is? Okay, so we got a few people, but most of us kind of know Rajivji's work. So I'll respond to this kind of a mix of audience so we don't go too much or too little. So the way I see Rajivji's work is in scholarly, so obviously Rajivji is one of the prominent scholars, international scholars on Hindu civilization. Now, scholarly work, I mean, what's the difference between a normal professor who's writing a research paper versus a deep scholar like Rajivji? So the way Rajivji takes is, the way I understand it, Rajivji, I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm saying anything wrong. He takes a dominant narrative. For example, let us say casteism is viewed as XYZ. That's a narrative in the mainstream. And that narrative is supported by experts, or you can say so-called experts, who say that we are specializing in this knowledge. And then we somehow deep inside we feel this narrative is not right. But who does the hard work to take on that nexus of all the scholars who are specialists sitting in their prominent positions and build a counter narrative? So that's the kind of thing Rajivji takes on. Take a particular dominant narrative that is propagated by scholars or an ecosystem of scholars that is not based on objectivity and that has flaws in it. So he takes it on and then builds a counter narrative. And building and writing a book is one part. That itself requires a huge amount of investigative work. But then top of it, after building that narrative, he takes it on himself to propagate it enough so that that counter narrative builds its own momentum. It has its own life. So think of it, typically how many of people you know in history who does the scholarly work, and on top of it, the scholarly work, they go out in the world and then they propagate that as well. It's a different skill when you're dealing with the material world and the game of the world of propagating and stuff. And it's a different skill too. So it requires huge amount of courage. Big thing is stamina, detachment, critical thinking, so competence. And when you're dealing with new subjects, going deep into it and building it, that is the purusharth. Somebody takes on themselves that this is my duty, and that's what Rajivji has done. At least that's how I view his work. So he has done these narratives for many things. That's how we have books over, I guess, more than a dozen years now, I guess, since 8-9, we've had Breaking India, which had a particular theme of how a lot of geopolitical institutions are working on the fault lines of India. Then there's philosophical book, Being Different. Then there's Indra's Net. There was a scholarly work about how Hinduism is not inherently one, it's just a new thing. So there's a lot of deep scholarly stuff that has happened. Now, this particular book, Snakes in the Ganga, what has been the dominant narrative? What is Rajivji building a counter narrative to it? Why the dominant narrative that's today has been, is harmful for the civilization or just not objective? That's just a fake narrative. So those are the things he's taking on. It's hard work, and this is how I have seen the work. And I will request Rajivji if I misrepresented it in some way, but I would request, what is the theme of this book? What has been the narrative before the book? What Rajivji is presenting in this? And what is his vision? And how all of us can possibly support that vision? With that, I'll request Rajivji to make his comments.
Thank you. Thank you. Sunil is one of the best introducing my work because he's internalized it, understood it very well, and I'm very appreciative of that. So I'm very glad to be here. Thank you for organizing this, and what a great occasion, the Hindu Heritage Month. So finally we get our own recognition after working on this for a very long time. Let me just tell you, 30 years ago or thereabouts when I first started, forget anything like this, I was not even allowed to speak in most Hindu temples in North America. They were embarrassed that he'll say something like the kind of stuff we're talking about, defending swastika, or talking about, hey, you know, there's all this Hindu phobia against us. The narratives are false, we have to counter them. This was considered too controversial. I have so many emails, so much of this from the early days. People would say, temples would say that, no, we do puja, we're very lucky that the government has allowed us, almost like we're guilty of something, we have to be scared. And let's not rock the boat, we're doing well, we're making some motels, we're buying some convenience stores, we're buying some fancy cars, good, you know. It's like sort of a loser mentality, as if we are slaves and we're very grateful, you know, for allowing us to survive. So I found this in the US more than I wasn't as familiar with Canada until more recently. But in the US, I found a Chicago big temple would say, no, we will rent him a place in a local place. We'll pay for it, we'll send you the food also, but you don't let him come here. And then another temple would say, I'll tell you what, we won't announce it in the flyer, we'll say something else, very general, and then he comes to the side door, and then he can talk. It's almost like I'm an embarrassment to them. So we started with that. So he talked about courage. It takes a lot of persistence and stamina to just put up with all this. So then I would have discussions with our priests and our Advait gurus and our scholars who were full of all this kind of stuff, you know, a lot of lofty stuff, they knew all this stuff. And so they would say, no, but why are we talking about, response and action and power game? We are not into that. So I said, like he hinted, Sunil hinted, both our itihas are like that. In one case, Bhagwan comes as Sri Ram and he has to fight. And this is a power game, power structure. And in the other case, Sri Krishna comes and he plans out a war. So what do you mean? If that is not Hindu, if that is not part of our dharma, then you don't understand it. You are doing puja to Ram, you are doing puja to Krishna, but you need to understand that they played the roles. These are important roles also. Protection of the Rashtra is important. Protection of the dharma is important. So it's not just puja. It's not only bhakti. Bhakti is one aspect. It's a very wonderful aspect. Meditation. I'm a meditator since I was a kid. And that's a very important aspect. But you cannot say that by meditation and yoga and bhakti, you've exhausted all that Hinduism has to offer. Hinduism has also got Chhatriyata. Hinduism has also got that you have to take on the forces that are at work. And you have to do it for your society. Rise above your own personal needs. So I had to argue all this. And then I realized that the way to argue with our people is to give our reference points. Like you keep saying that this is in the Mahabharata, this is in the Ramayana, and this is in the Dharma Shastra. And then they'd say, okay, it must be okay to do. So when I took on the project of picking a dominant major discourse, major thesis, what we in our tradition call Siddhant. Siddhant is a theory, a proposition, a principle, a policy statement. That's a Siddhant. So you can have a Siddhant on how rights are to be given. You can have a Siddhant that argues a certain point of view. So when you've established a Siddhant and adopted a Siddhant, it's like adopting a position on how you're going to reason and argue on a certain topic, certain kind of topic. So you could have a Siddhant on economics. You could have a Siddhant on metaphysics. So our ancestors, their greatness was that when we studied a Siddhant, we always studied the opponent because our people, a lot of our people would say, why are you worrying about others? Why do you want to criticize them? This is not a Hindu way. And then they would tell me that, Vasudhaiva, Kutumbakam, so don't worry about others. Well, that's a mistaken view of Vasudhaiva, Kutumbakam. I'll come to that in a moment. But I discovered that I have to use the word purvapaksha. And then they're all very impressed. I said, Adi Shankara was the greatest proponent of Vedanta. that in modern time, in our memories, recent memory, even though 1400 years or even longer back, his major approach was called purvapaksha, which means study the other, understand the other in a respectful way, and then give a response to the other, uttarapaksha. So this is an old system of ours. One of the reasons we declined as a civilization is that when the foreign influences started coming, we did not do purvapaksha. Yesterday at the University of Toronto, one of the very exciting things, we had good Q&A with students. One of the students asked what was the reason for decline, and I gave a lot of reasons, several reasons. And later, one of the reasons I gave was that we stopped doing purvapaksha. So when the Arabs came, then later the Europeans came, we didn't look at who are these people, what's their point of view, what's their ideology. We did not purvapaksha them. And we just were more concerned about we live our own life. They must be poor people. They've come here to get food, and maybe we don't have to worry about them. Well, they ended up becoming our rulers. So it's a stupid thing that you did not take them seriously for so long. So I kept telling our people that you have, our gurus today, our spiritual traditions have forgotten the purvapaksha of the, not just ordinary people, but you have to do purvapaksha of the most powerful things out there. The most powerful opposing points of view. So today it would be Western Universalism. That's a term I use for describing how the experience of West, their history, their experience, their philosophy, their social problems, they've constructed views that kind of project it on everybody else. And so whatever they went through is a template through which everybody else is to be studied. And that's, I call it Western Universalism. But that denies everybody else their own history, their own way of looking at things, their own experiences. And how you recover this, one of the ways you recover it is through what I've called Sanskrit non-translatables. Because these terms are not translatable because our experience is not something that you can map onto somebody else's experience. They don't have a word for it because they didn't have the experience. So even a simple word like yoga, you cannot translate it in some language where they never did yoga. They don't know what it is. You cannot call it exercise, you cannot call it gymnastics, you cannot call it prayer, it's none of those things. So a huge number of Sanskrit non-translatables are an evidence that we've had things that are not mappable to Western Universalism. And that's also the recipe to solve the problem, is you recover these terms. You recover our terms and you introduce them into the English language, and I call that the Sanskritization of English. I gave a talk at the Indian Embassy in Washington. They never called me back because I talked about, my talk was the Sanskritization of English. And even the Americans, they loved it. They thought it's a very interesting idea. I said, Sanskrit, English is enriched by Latin, you've got Greek words, there are French words. Why not put Sanskrit words in English? And you enrich the English language. You already got some words like yoga and all that, but you don't really understand the meaning. But I'm talking about putting a lot of important terms and making them part of the English language. That would be the Sanskritization of English. They loved it. Is the Indian embassy people very scared? Oh, no, maybe some journalist will call me chauvinist or something. No, we can't do it. So they called the guy who had organized it, my friend there, Sant Gupta ji, and they said, no, this we don't want and all. So what I'm telling you is that now it's good that we're celebrating all these things. But the journey to get here has been very difficult. It's not been easy, because you have to fight our own temples, you've got to fight our own politicians, you've got to fight our own leaders who are representing supposedly Hindu Dharma, you've got to fight the diplomats, you've got to fight all those guys. Because it didn't necessarily have to turn out this way. I'm glad it did. But it could have turned out the other way had nobody really stood up and shifted this and pushed it in the other direction. So that was an essential, very important movement, and it's been there for 30 years. We're not done. We're not fully done because there is still a lot that, and this book is another level we're taking it to, and I will come to that in a moment. There's so many issues to talk about. The issue that, one of the issues that the gentleman before, who is a MP, he's an MP here, right? MP, very nice, he spoke. MP from this Toronto area? No, Ottawa. Very good, very nice. Hindu, very proud. Wow. I have to say, I wish he were here. I would want to congratulate him because in the United States, we have 5 or 6 Indian Hindu congressmen in the Democratic Party who are ashamed of that.
Yes.
Yeah. And I say kudos to you Canadians that you've got your MPs representing you rather than betraying you. We have our congressmen taking our money. I have stupid people who live in Princeton. I don't want to name them, but they'll see all this video. They are my friends. They're very rich people. They made a lot of money. And for them, it's a big showing off thing that you have a fundraiser and you raise $1 million for this congressman and for this one and that one. And they are zero in their brain in terms of figuring out what is his position. What is his view on this, that, and that. And as long as he looks Indian, he's ethnic, we're very proud, he's like one of our betas, we're going to give him money and he will run and whatnot. But now we are realizing that most of these people betrayed us. And there was no quality control, there was no purvapaksha. You have to study them. That takes some time. And so we ended up with that problem, and you guys haven't. I'm glad that you haven't, and US people should learn from this. The second thing he mentioned, I wish he were here, I wanted to tell him a little bit about the history of this fight over the swastika. I had something to do with it. 25 years ago or so, Swami Dayananda Saraswati, the Ashtavidya Gurukulam, major figure in representing Hinduism. After Swami Chinmayanand, and before that, Swami Vivekananda, he's probably the titanic figure, the gigantic figure who represented us in the world stage. He's no more. So we were very close. And so one day he calls me and he says that we have this letter from the Jewish side. They want to do a Hindu-Jewish summit of leaders because we have common problems, common issues facing the world. And so they have to face certain problems in the religion. Certain religions always attacking them, same ones attacking us. So they feel we should have a summit. And the purpose of the summit is to figure out what's common, what are the issues that we should resolve. So why don't you come and we'll have a gathering. So Swamiji called various Hindu leaders, and he called me. And the others were mostly sadhus representing big sampradayas, big organizations. So Swamiji went around asking, what should be with our agenda? What should we propose? What are the topics? So somebody wanted to say that God is one and all, And somebody wanted to say that we should teach them about our philosophy and so forth. Mostly philosophical views. My view was that they're not wanting to meet with us to learn philosophy, at least not in the first meeting. I mean, they want to understand, from our point of view, what are the things to be solved? What are the matter? Jews are very practical people. They're very action-oriented. They'll put some things on the table for us, and then we should put some things on the table for them. That's how they want to negotiate. So Swamiji said, what do you think we should say? So I said, what we should talk about is swastika, because that is an issue that comes from the Jewish side. It is the Holocaust of the Jews which banned this as a Hitler symbol, and that is wrong, incorrect information. And if we can convince the Jews, and if they can go public in a resolution that we can all agree on, that will be very historical. So all these people looking at me saying, no, Swamiji is very controversial. He'll just say something like that, and no, we can't talk to the Jews about swastika. So I said, you have to talk to the Jews about swastika. So I remember a few years before that, our foundation used to fund a Princeton Day School, which is a nice, well-known private school in Princeton. My kids used to go there. We funded that they had a class called World Religions. So we would take their class and some teachers and students and parents to India to study world religions. And they would go to Rishikesh, and they went to Nepal, they went to various towns in Delhi, and they looked at all the different faiths, how they're practiced in India. And to give them orientation, to give them a kind of a talk, I gave a talk to the whole school, introducing some ideas that I thought educationally would be valuable. And one of the ideas I talked about was swastika. I said, one of the things you should learn, you're going to go to India, is your whole idea of swastika is wrong. And this is what it is. And all of them, the principal called me. She was a very enlightened person, very wonderful person. But she said, parents don't like this. There are a lot of Jews here. You're saying that, we should teach them about swastika. Teach them about swastika. I said, yeah, you should teach them about swastika. So anyway, it was considered a bit controversial. But these kids went. When they came back, they all had to present their experience. So many of them, at least I would say 3 or 4 of them, in their photographs, pictures of what was unusual, what was strange, what was exciting and all that, they would show the swastika behind a truck, swastika on a road somewhere, and the name of a street or some kind of in a small town, the name of a shop, there's some swastika symbol on it. Everywhere there's swastika. So this was a way of, the school got very introduced to this idea that, hey, this is something normal in India. And if we want to understand them on their own terms, we better know what this means to them, which is different than what we are told. So that started my whole project. And then when Swamiji told me about this Jewish meeting, I brought this out. And sure enough, the other people present, they didn't like this idea. So I gave Swamiji my view. I said, if you want to educate them, rather than educating them God is one and all that, you should tell them about swastika, which is a matter of tension, and we can show them evidence. So he said, I'll go with you. You go for it. So he encouraged me. And I prepared a presentation on swastika. And the meeting was held in Delhi. The first meeting, second was held in London, then New York, then Tel Aviv, like that. So this Hindu and the Jewish side had many meetings. And Swamiji would ask me to be the sort of Hindu scholar to come around. And so in that meeting, the Jews were sitting on one side table, we were sitting on this side, and the Jewish side the delegation was led by someone who's a cabinet member of the Israeli cabinet. The Israeli government has a cabinet post who's called the chief rabbi. The Israeli country has a cabinet position for the chief rabbi, in their country. So the chief rabbi is sitting there and all these important people. So the protocol was that we'll alternate speakers. So somebody from their side spoke, their head of the delegation, and Swamiji from our side, then different people. So Swamiji gave priority to all the sadhus. There were somebody from BAPS and somebody from this and that, various organizations. They all spoke. And then Swamiji looked at me and said, now you go, your turn, give it to them. So I went there and I said, fine. So I said that I'm going to tell you about swastika. And the Jews, very nice, smile, polite, okay, very, as you would expect, people, Westerners, very polite, nice. And then they're listening to me and I'm going on and on telling them. I got a standing ovation from these guys, the only speaker, because they thought they learned something new and I was so honest about it and they liked it. So then, another meeting of the same group, then they said, I said, you should investigate it for yourself. Don't take my word for it. So they appointed a team of 2 scholars from each side. So me and one other scholar, Hindu, and 2 scholars from the Jewish side. And they said, before the next meeting, every year we'll have a meeting. So before the next meeting, which is going to be somewhere in London or New York, you give us a report, joint report. So these 4 of us would talk and meet, and we gave them all our data, and they checked it out. And they also wrote a briefing paper to the Jewish side, telling them what they have discovered about what our findings are. And so this is done in a very scholarly way. And the Jewish side was more and more accepting of whatever we are saying and finding it very amazing that one of the things that keeps our traditions separate is that there is this big misunderstanding. And so the resolution was going to be passed. A resolution of the 3 or 4 meetings of the summit was going to be passed in Israel. And I had a family issue, family health issue, medical surgery going on, very serious one, so I couldn't attend at the last minute. But Swamiji asked one of his people that you get Rajiv to draft what the resolution should say about the swastika. So I wrote a draft, and that draft was printed on the Hindus and Jews, blah, 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 all their names, we resolve as follows. And that resolution says that swastika is not anything to do with the Hitler, Nazism and all. It's a sacred symbol and we the Jews respect it. They said that. And this was signed by the chief rabbi and by all those people. I have that with me. And there is a PDF on it. If you want, I can send you. And this is on the internet. So this document, where the Jewish, at the highest level of the Jewish people, they accepted this officially as a policy statement, that they will no longer lobbying against the swastika, because the Jews, Hitler never called it swastika. He called it Hakenkreuz. And in the 1900s, early part of when the Nazi party got into office, when they were becoming very powerful, election-wise, they were running, winning and all that. When they were becoming powerful, then the New York Times had a article, I have a copy of that, and it says the Nazis announce a new symbol. And that is the first US media coverage on this new symbol, and it is not, nowhere in that article is it called swastika. So this was never called swastika. In Hitler's book Mein Kampf, in the German edition, not the English translation, it is not called swastika. So the Germans themselves did not call it that. It is a British, because they wanted to kind of, because Indian nationalists were getting up, and Arya Samajis were there, all kind of people were there, and so our swastika is a big symbol for us. It was their strategy to keep us down in the eyes of the world and link us with fascism and do Hitler and all that, and show that this independence movement is all, and whatever it is linked with the enemy. So they translated it like this. This became part of the whole Indology, and then they started linking it with some Aryan stuff and all that. So, so this theorizing the Aryan and then bringing it down and linking with Hitler, this all happened as Mischief. And this is what I wrote in my book, Breaking India. I wrote about all these things. So this, I wish I would tell him that what he has produced, what he's announcing is a tremendous victory. But for those of us who've been fighting it, it's also mixed emotions, because our own people didn't support it. Our own people didn't support it. My own family would say, Rajiv, why are you fighting? What are you going to get out of it? आप सबसे लड़ाई कर रहे हैं, बदनामी होगी. Now our neighbors are asking, why is he involved with this swastika? And all this kind of stuff. So it is not an easy thing for you to stand up for a cause where you're not going to get anything out of it. You're only going to get hit. You're only going to get hit by your own people also. So that's what this Chhatriya is about. It involves, and it means you have to stand up and take it, because firstly, nobody else will do this. If you have to do it. Secondly, you're not going to get anything out of it. You're only going to get blamed for things, and it's not going to be an easy victory. You're just going to spend your whole life doing this. There'll be many, ups and downs, and you'll also have, you'll face setbacks. You'll have to do it despite all that. Now, I mentioned a while back that I'll tell you about the mistaken interpretation of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, when it says that the whole world is a family, doesn't mean that all the family members are good. In fact, the Kauravas and Pandavas are one family. Kauravas and Pandavas are one family. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that doesn't mean, our people are so dumb and so stupid. You just say Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, they say, sab kuch theek hai, everybody's fine. But it's so stupid. The Devas and Asuras in the Samudra Manthan are one family. Devas and Asura, one family. So you see, the whole world is a family. Of course, the bacteria is also family, but if it's my job as a doctor, I have to kill this bacteria. Of course, Bin Laden is also part of the same family. Of course, whoever is the enemy who's out to kill us, he is also part of the same family. So Vasudha Kutumbakam does not mean that I accept everything the other fellow does, no matter how stupid, vicious, ugly, dangerous, because he's part of my family. That is not what we are supposed. We are not supposed to become morons. Vasudha Kutumbakam is not a slogan for morons. I mean, it says at one level we are all one family. Krishna is telling Arjun the oneness of all the Atmas That this is all Bhagwan's form only. So he's telling them that oneness. And yet, why you have to go kill these guys? Not only ordinary people, your own cousins. So unless you have understood that at one level there is one, at another level of manifestation there is many, and these manys have conflicts, and you have to play your role in this conflict. Unless you understand that, you don't know what Leela means, what is meant by Leela. And you just got some escapist idea of some shlokas you know, and you can talk about lofty stuff and we are one and Vasudhaiva, Kutumbakam and all that. It's all nonsense. You have to understand the complexity of the world, many levels of meaning at different levels of consciousness. So yes, at one level, there is only one. Okay. So I had this problem. Somebody introduced me to some sadhu who I was told is very intelligent, he's very educated, and he knows all these things, and he will help you, work with you. So I remember this was in Bangalore, so we met in a hotel, and we met in the lounge in coffee, we have breakfast together. So he walks in, and he starts talking about, I don't like any differentiation. He didn't like that I'm showing differentiation, because he said, no, it creates tension. So I don't like, I don't mind, I don't want you to say that there's difference. So it's all same. So I said, then you shouldn't be calling yourself Swami XY Anand. You should say you are Reverend so-and-so, Reverend Smith. It's the same thing, sir. So he's not very happy. So I said, because you're saying it's all the same, everything, all the materials are Bhagwan only. If everything is Bhagwan, then this food and the prasad and what you throw as waste in the toilet are same. So you can interchange them. You can eat that as your prasad and you can throw this away. What's the difference? What's the difference between eating certain things and avoiding certain things? What's the difference between good and bad? It means good be same hai, bad be same hi hai, wo bhi same hi hai, Bhagwan hi hai. After all, if you think about it, how would you differentiate between something is sattvic and something is tamasic, something is rajasic? How would you differentiate in Ayurveda between the guna, between the different type of prakritis or different people have? If you do not understand the importance of difference, because everything is Bhagwan, then you cannot function. You cannot function between an honest tax return and a dishonest tax return, because to you it's the same. Maybe you just add a few zeros here and there and then it's the same for you. I said, then if you're a doctor and you're supposed to give 10 milligram and you give him 1000 milligram, you can just say a few more zeros. How does it matter? So he said, no, because that will kill the patient. But I said, whether he's dead or alive is the same. So, the person got so fed up of me, he walked out. Because I was giving him his own logic. I was showing that our people have not understood. We parrot certain things, but we don't really understand fully. And there is value in going deeper. So, same at one level, but very different at another level. We have to understand and deal with it. That at a certain level of consciousness, things are the same, but that consciousness, unified consciousness, includes within it all the differences. And so when your consciousness is operating at the level of differences, which is the dharmic kshetra, the karmic kshetra, the kurukshetra, the fact that we are born is that we have our prarabdha and we have to perform it in this level of reality. And in this level of reality, we have to negotiate differences. We have to understand differences. We have to deal with differences. We must know the difference between right and wrong. Between dharma and the adharma, there is difference. Otherwise, the whole gyan is useless, because if there is no difference, everything is the same, then why are you telling me about dharma and adharma? It's all the same. So our own people are confused. Our own teachers are confused. So you guys have to be not only knowledgeable, but you have to go sometimes raise questions and educate our teachers also, because they need to learn. There's a lot of colonization of our teaching. The fact that most of the great thinkers, when they translated Gita, they translated Atman as soul, and they translated all these kind of things, and even Akash as ether. It is not ether. It is full of context. So this mistranslation of words, of which are non-translatable, and very easily going into Western Universalism to feel like we are sort of superior. So to look like we are also like Westerners, hum bhi aise hi hai. We've done these things. If you look at I'm writing, one of the books I'm writing is on Rashtra. So obviously I'm looking at many, many sources. I thought I should also ask RSS because their name starts with Rashtra. So obviously they should have done the research. So this from the very senior levels of thinkers and scholars. They sent me to one young man. He will know, he will tell you. I said, I want to read for myself. So they gave me the RSS founder's works on his writings and said, these are the works there you will find Rashtra explained. I'm sorry to tell you, I have a lot of respect for a lot of work RSS has done. I read the English version. Maybe in Marathi he wrote differently, I don't know. But in the English version, he starts by explaining nation-state as a European concept and lists a range of European scholars who are experts in nation-state and quotes them. Not one Indian Shastra. And defining that idea of nation-state, he says this is a Rashtra. So we've digested Rashtra into Western Universalism, which is very strange because my whole topic is what is Rashtra different from nation-state. And this guy, he's a founder of RSS, great man, I've been to his Samadhi in Nagpur and all that, I respect them. But I have to say that if there are other documents that are more important, I wasn't given those. I was given this one, which is a book. And I found that if I were in his shoes, I would start from the Vedic definition of Rashtra. So I started doing my own. Because I found that none of them had done a Rashtra idea from our texts. So you tell me now, I want you to guess, how many times does the word Rashtra come in the Vedic text? Guess.
Zero.
How many times? No, okay. It comes over 30 times. Very interesting. Yeah, but I'm saying that the word Rashtra comes... See, this is a problem. We don't have searchable texts. You have searchable Guru Granth Sahib, you have searchable Quran, you have searchable Bible. Not only the primary text, but all the commentaries and all that, they're searchable. So searchability, I mean, we're doing so many all kind of utpatank work. Somebody should produce searchable, all the Shastra, make it searchable. So if I put in Varna, if I'm doing research on it, I should get all the hits, all the slokas. If I'm saying Jati, I should get all of them. If I'm saying Rashtra. Now, it's very interesting for me to figure out Rashtra. I had to go through half a dozen Vedic scholars. Each of them is like a search engine. Vedic scholar is a search engine because this guy says, I know these texts, I know all of them, I will tell you, you give me the term and I'll tell you where it appears. So he'll take a month or two and he'll give you a list of all the shlokas. He'll tell you. That's very good. But it should be 10 seconds. It should not take 10 months, to do that. And then you go to a different scholar and he'll find some of the same, but he'll have different ones also. So you keep doing it, and then at some point you say, okay, I think I have got a good idea of what it means. The word Rashtra appears a lot. The word Rajya appears a lot. Okay? So I'm just giving you some clues, those of you who are research oriented, because I'm going to write these books anyway, but many other people may want to join in. Rashtra is not the same as Rajya. Okay? And what we call Rashtrapati should be called Rajyapati. That Rashtrapati Bhavan, that Rashtrapati is not a correct Rashtrapati according to Vedic idea of Rashtrapati. So, we are also mixed up. True. Now, of course, first we have to fight कि हमारे को मंदिर बनाने दो. We made mandirs, very good, and do bhakti and don't call us idol worshippers and cult and all that, which is what we were facing 30, 40 years ago. We are past that. Then you allow us to talk about Chhatriyata, and we are now able to talk about Chhatriyata. and talk about, Hindu phobia and talk about it openly and confidently. We have MP also who can stand up and talk about it and challenge their idea of swastika. We've come a long way. Now we have to go even further. We have to keep doing this. We can't just say, "Ho gaya kaam, ab now we just eat our laddus and go home." You have to continue this work. Because now what you have to say is, are there deep in our structure today, including our constitution, including the ruling party, including the Sangh, the RSS, all of these guys, are they the product of a lot of influences, 1,000-year, 12-year influence of all kind of foreign stuff that they have unconsciously and inadvertently internalized, that we need to pull these out? You see my point? So there is a lot of work ahead. And I'm just giving you a few examples. We don't properly interpret Vasudhaiva, Kutumbakam. We don't interpret Rashtra. We don't interpret Raja. All kind of stuff like that. I could go on, but I came to talk about my book. I felt so excited about the MP. I felt so excited. I thought I'll talk about those things because I don't see in the United States such people who are elected officials who talk about Hindu Dharma as an elected official. So I really wish he were here. I would love to have a video discussion with him that I can take it back to the US. And if you can arrange that, I would, even on Skype, on Zoom, we can do that. I would love to have a video discussion with him. We have our elections coming next week in the US. And I wish I could feature this and hold those people responsible in the US. So that's why I got sidetracked, but this is a good conversation also to talk about these things. Now tell you a little bit about the book. The book takes on a huge narrative, a huge siddhant that has come from the West, which is called wokeism. It's a popular term. It's also called critical race theory. It's a form of Marxism. It came to help the blacks against the whites, which was a good thing. I fully support that. But then the Indian left was involved in converting it into critical caste theory, which says that the Dalits are the blacks of India and the non-Dalits are the whites of India. And caste is like racism. So in US you have very tough racism laws. So now there is a whole book from Harvard on how IITs are basically casteist. IITs, the idea of meritocracy is a sham. It's not really meritocracy. What they really are doing is caste bias, and they're calling it merit, but the system is against the Dalits and minorities, and it supports the Brahmins. This is what their theory is. It's from Harvard University Press and written by a Harvard professor, so it carries a lot of weight. And then they're taking these ideas to Silicon Valley and filing lawsuits against Silicon Valley companies which hire a lot of Indians, saying that these Indians are all casteist and biased and they're racist. So you have to do surveys, and we have to do caste sensitivity training workshops. And these caste sensitivity training workshops are done by people who just hate Hinduism, and they're charging up to $75,000 an hour to conduct these workshops. So I was telling Sunil we should start a consulting business. This is a kind of what they've done is find out people who are very rich who will pay whatever because they feel कि चलो जान तो छुड़ाई अपनी इन लोगों को दे दिया पैसा ठीक है वो जान छुड़ाई, and you tell them something that can be a scandal, that can be a big controversy for them, and they don't want it. You tell them देखो हमने ये खोज की है, we found this. You're right up to the CEO on down. There are a lot of these Brahmins, and this is the stuff we found about them. And you'll all be accused of racism. Your company will fall apart because bad reputation. But we can give you sensitivity training. We can help you figure it out. And we have to go to every department and keep repeating this sensitivity training dozens of times. Of course, a lot of money they can make. So this is going on now. So this type of work is happening. And Harvard is at the center of doing this kind of work. It's been there for a while, happening for a while. Another surprise another bombshell in this book is that some Indian billionaires are funding it. Now you might wonder why the hell are they funding it? Why is Mittal, there is this Lakshmi Mittal and family South Asia Institute. It used to be called Indology. Now it's called South Asia Studies. And Lakshmi Mittal and family funding it. But the subject matter and the content and the type of people they bring there are Hindu-phobic people. They bring all these kind of ultra-left people, and they're always putting out poison against our tradition. And billionaire's name is on the panel in the back. When you have that display, it says Lakshmi Mittal and family. Then there is this Mahindra Humanities Center. There is the Piramal Public Health, all of this kind of stuff. So we are exposing a certain Siddhant, which is very anti-India. We're calling it Breaking India 2.0. We're calling that the poison. Then the nest of snakes is Harvard, where the snakes are being produced, born, nurtured. They're breeding snakes with this poison. And then these snakes are being exported all over. They bring snakes from India, baby snakes, and make them put poison and send them back. And there's a lot of this going on. And I would say a couple of thousand people from India have been brainwashed, turned around from industry, from media, from academia, from policy making. All kind of people like that have come and gone through these seminars and conferences and been sent back. So when you wonder why are there so many IS officers that are confused, why is there so much media negativity, why are the Indian government's policies sometimes mixed up, you have to look at where are the influences coming from. And the discovery of these influences led me to the mightiest, most powerful university in the world and think tanks in the world. And along with this Harvard University is the World Economic Forum. They're also interrelated. They're into these kind of things. So India point is that anything that is prestigious, people will blindly take it. They want to be part of the fashion because it's cool. You write your check $50 million and give it to them, and your name is on a building, and you now made it. You're an honorary white. So that's the thing that the Indians want. So that's what this book is about. It exposes that. Now, I don't want you to feel afraid of the size. It's not just for exercise. You need to read about 100 pages, that's all. 40-page introduction, 30-40 page conclusion. In between 22 chapters, each has a one-page overview. You just read an introduction, one-page overview, which is the overview tells you what's the highlights of the chapter, what you need to know to understand the chapter, and then the conclusion. You will know everything that the book says. Only thing you will have missed out is all the evidence. So it's like, when you go to, when a legal case is made, there is the theory, what is the case? And then there's all the exhibits, all the evidence, all the testimony, all the data, forensics and whatnot. So I put that all in the book because I want it all in one place. So if you make a statement, it's like a training manual for a Hindu toolkit. Think of it like that. So we're training people on what are these issues, what to say. So if you say what I've said and somebody wants to push back and get more data, then we have the data also, the evidence. That's why the book is big, but don't let that scare you. Thank you very much, all of you, for organizing this. It's a great mandir. I've seen such good vibrations when I come here.